The European crypto industry spent the last 2 years fighting about MiCA, but as it turns out, that was the wrong fight, because on the 29th of June 2026, the European Commission extended the deadline for public feedback on its review of MiCA. Sounds like standard bureaucratic stuff, right? Well, no, because inside that consultation extension is a question far, far more dangerous than anything in MiCA. It asks whether the parts of crypto you actually use, perps, staking, lending, DeFi, tokenized assets, should be dragged into the rulebook built for banks and stock exchanges. And if the answer comes back yes, much of crypto becomes legally impossible to offer in Europe. So, is this a genuine effort to protect retail, or is it the handover of crypto to the same institutions that spent a decade fighting it? To answer that, we're going to show you exactly what's on the table, why MiFID, not MiCA, is potentially lethal for permissionless protocols, and who actually stands to benefit from all of this. My name is DC, and you're watching the Coin Bureau. Now, before we get into the mechanics, let's have a look at what happened. MiCA's transitional period ended on July 1st, 2026, and full enforcement is now live. And the consolidation was serious. We've gone from over 3,000 registered crypto firms in 2024 down to somewhere around 200 to 280 fully licensed CASPs by mid-2026. OKX's European CEO Gerald Goes reckons roughly 80% of legacy crypto companies simply won't survive this transition. Binance halted spot, margin and futures trading for EU users after failing to secure its Greek license, Tether's USDT got delisted from regulated European exchanges, and much, much more. This is not sunshine and rainbows. The industry got seriously shaken up. It's in this environment when the Commission opened the door to a second, far heavier one. Which brings us to what this fight is actually about. First, we have to outline the distinction between the two rulebooks at the center of all of this. MiCA is crypto's own bespoke regime in the EU. Put simply, it's the list of rules written specifically for digital assets, and crucially, it's a residual regime. That means it only governs crypto that does not already qualify as a financial instrument under existing law. MiFID II is that existing law. It's the framework built for banks, brokers, and traditional stock exchanges, and it's an entirely different beast. And here's where we need to dig a little deeper. Article 2, Section 4 of MiCA says that any crypto asset qualifying as a financial instrument under MiFID II is excluded from MiCA completely. It falls under the full TradFi stack instead. So the all-important question is, where do the authorities draw that line? The ESMA, that's European Securities and Markets Authority, has guidelines which establish that the blockchain wrapper does not change the legal reality. So if a token behaves economically like a share, a bond, a derivative, or a fund unit, it gets treated like one. Regulators have rejected what they call semantic arbitrage. That means you can't rebrand a derivative as an event contract or dress up a security as a utility token and expect that label to save you. It's on-chain is not a legal defense, and this principle is why the review might reach deep into crypto. If function beats form, almost nothing is safe. So let's consider what's actually at stake here. Let's begin with crypto's most popular products, perpetual futures and prediction markets. These already need dual licensing for EU retail today. A MiCA license for the platform side plus full MiFID authorization for the derivative side. ESMA has clarified that event contracts functioning as derivatives need MiFID authorization. Full stop. The current review decides whether that dual licensing model expands and tightens, or whether these products get shoved exclusively under one regime. Next, staking and lending. Right now, these are in a gray zone, not specifically regulated as a distinct category. But the Commission is explicitly asking whether they need dedicated, stricter rules. We're talking standards that look an awful lot like traditional banking regulations. Then there's the counterintuitive one, real-world assets, or RWAs, and tokenized funds. Tokenized treasuries and money market products qualify as MiFID financial instruments from the very moment they're issued. So a yield-bearing tokenized treasury product can be a transferable security which drags in prospectus regulation and a bunch of disclosure requirements, none of which are MiCA at all. And finally, the big one, DeFi. The DeFi exemption itself is under review. Right now, MiCA Recital 22 excludes services provided in a fully decentralized manner with no identifiable intermediary. But here's the issue. Recital 22 provides no precise legal test for what fully decentralized actually means. And into that grey area, the current review could float due diligence requirements on any entity touching a protocol, plus mandatory smart contract certification. That would be a complete mess for DeFi in Europe, making it virtually impossible for the ecosystem to be compliant. So as you see, a lot is at stake here, and it's hard to keep up with all of this legal stuff. Believe me, if you want to cut through that regulatory noise and actually find out what's going on quickly, then join the Coin Bureau Telegram channel. That's where we share breaking news, on-chain alpha, and the market updates that truly matter the second they land. To get involved, just hit the link down in the description or scan the QR code on your screen. Right, back to it. Now we get to why MiFID is potentially lethal for DeFi. To get an understanding of this, let's take a look at what MiFID actually demands, and you'll see how each one collides with permissionless code. First, you need licensed investment firm status, a materially higher bar than CASP license with capital and organizational standards attached. Second, best execution, an obligation to take all sufficient steps to get clients the best possible result. Third, suitability and appropriateness testing, a mandatory assessment of a client's knowledge, experience, and risk tolerance before you provide the service. Fourth, position limits, and fifth, full pre- and post-trade transparency. Now picture a permissionless smart contract trying to satisfy any of that. A smart contract cannot run a suitability test. It can't verify your risk tolerance. It can't exercise discretionary judgment on best execution because, well, it's autonomous code. These obligations were built for firms with compliance departments. It doesn't really make sense when applied to protocols with no controlling person at all. In other words, these requirements are simply impossible for DeFi to meet. But there's an even deeper problem here. Financial instrument definitions in Europe are set nationally, member state by member state. So the exact same token could be a simple MiCA crypto asset in one country and a regulated security in another. 27 national regulators, 27 interpretations. Poland is one cautionary tale here. It failed to implement its own MiCA legislation because of a political standoff, leaving roughly 2,000 local firms in regulatory limbo. And if we scale that chaos across a whole continent and hang a MiFID reclassification on top of that, well, things get ridiculously complicated. But that brings us to one more sinister element of this whole thing, because if we consider who can actually survive this and who can't, the idea that these measures are about protecting retail starts to look very suspect indeed. MiFID's compliance stack, licensed firm status, suitability testing, capital requirements, best execution infrastructure is realistically achievable only by the well-capitalized established firms. So that's banks, brokers, and their shiny new tokenization desks. A permissionless, non-custodial protocol cannot comply by design. But a bank's tokenization desk, oof, that can comply beautifully. And we don't have to guess whether compliance-driven consolidation will happen because it's already happening. Remember that collapse from 3,000 firms down to 280 mentioned earlier? That's how things are playing out at the MiCA licensing stage alone, before MiFID reclassification adds an extra pound of weight. And now consider who's positioned to scoop up what's left. JP Morgan's Connexus has processed over $4 trillion in transactions, averaging around $7 billion daily as of mid-2026. Its JPM coin now issues on Base as, in their words, regulated digital cash, with Connexus also exploring other institutional DLT networks. Ripple, Deutsche Bank, MasterCard, and Ondo Finance have all announced tokenization initiatives. That's an institutional push to dominate the RWA space, the fastest growing space in crypto. And here's one more thing that's truly telling. Firms already holding MiFID licenses get a massive head start under MiCA Article 60, which lets them offer crypto services via simple notification rather than full authorization. The advantage is hardwired into the framework. Institutions able to operate fluidly across both regimes will lead the tokenized economy. So if institutions are the only ones who can play in both regimes at once, the real goal becomes obvious. Regulators will say these legal measures are about investor protection. But the effect is handing the future of crypto to the exact institutions that can afford the crazy compliance costs. This consolidation is driving the new rules. Obviously, none of this sounds good, but before we go full doomer, let's look at the other side. First, what we have right now is an extension of the public feedback period, not anything signed into law. The Commission's mandatory report isn't due until 30th June 2027, and actual legislative amendments aren't expected until roughly 2028. So nothing here is settled. Second, the EU has real precedent for calibrated carve-outs. The so-called digital ledger technology pilot regime exists as a regulatory sandbox, letting authorized firms run DLT market infrastructure with targeted exemptions from specific MiFID requirements. So the machinery to write crypto-friendly exemptions exists. Third, and this is the big one, the industry is not powerless here. That deadline extension from the 31st of August to the 30th of September, it's being read across the industry as a direct result of lobbying pressure. Serious voices are engaging constructively, from Coinbase to compliance firms like Nota Bene. Industry voices have warned the review risks creating a bureaucratic machine that could stifle a nascent industry. So this is not a done deal. But the concerns and the risks to the industry are there for everyone to see. On one hand, the stated goal is entirely reasonable, right? Nobody sensible argues that retail should be handed opaque, leveraged, unregulated products with no protection whatsoever. Suitability testing, transparency, capital requirements, these exist for good reasons. But on the other hand, applying that TradFi stack to permissionless crypto simply substitutes DeFi with permissioned bank-issued alternatives. You don't make DeFi safer by demanding it to do things code physically cannot do. You just make DeFi illegal and replace it with a permissioned, bank-issued version that captures the same economic activity. The retail user doesn't get a safer perp or a safer yield product. They get a bank's tokenized fund with 3 layers of fees, or they get nothing at all offered legally in Europe. And that's why this lands on crypto users, not on some Brussels committee, because this hits the products regular people use, earning yield on your assets, trading, using a DeFi app that doesn't ask permission. If offering these legally in Europe becomes impossible, the builders and the liquidity are forced to go offshore. The European user either gets walled out entirely or pushed toward riskier, unregulated venues, which is the exact opposite of what protection is supposed to achieve. And as it happens, legal monitoring is already live, by the way. FinTelegram has launched a MiCA/MiFID parameter radar to track DEX frontends and on-chain derivative platforms serving EU users without authorization. Hyperliquid is already flagged on it. So in other words, the walling off has just begun. And with that in mind, let's look at the signals that actually tell you which way this is going. First, the responses before that 30th of September deadline. If the industry floods this file with feedback and the Commission's language stays open, that's your signal that DeFi exemption survives in some workable form. Second, we have to watch whether ESMA defines genuine decentralization. This is expected during 2026, and this is the single most important definition in the entire debate. A narrow, workable test keeps DeFi alive, but a test that voids the exemption the moment any human touches a front end or a multisig kills it. Third, the competing jurisdictions, because capital tends to vote with its feet. Switzerland captured 47% of all European blockchain VC funding in 2025, some $728 million. Legal advisors reported a sharp rise in relocation inquiries from European crypto founders, many from EU states like Germany, Spain, and Italy. The UK has published its final crypto rules and is deliberately undercutting the EU, a 1% stable capital floor versus the EU's 2%. So if those inflows accelerate through 2027, that's Europe exporting its talent and capital. And finally, of course, there's the eventual June 2027 Commission report itself. That document is the one that can carry binding legislative proposals. Everything before that is input. But that report is where input becomes law, and that could change everything for crypto in Europe. So tell us, what do you think? Is the EU attempting to bring real protection to crypto, or is it regulatory capture from the legacy finance powers that be? Please get highly opinionated in the comments down below. And if you want to understand how MiCA already reshaped the entire European market before this fight even started, then definitely check out our full breakdown right over here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon. This is DC, signing